That fire wasn't just for you. It was for every liar who thinks they're safe.
Grant Loring stood in his own doorway, watching his wife press her mouth against his best friend's neck like she was drinking him alive. Neither of them noticed him there in the winter shadow, snow melting off his work boots onto the hardwood floor Dana had insisted they refinish last spring. He didn't move, didn't breathe loud enough for them to hear. Just watched Vince Redden's hands slide down Dana's back while she whispered something that made him laugh. The same laugh Grant had heard at backyard barbecues and birthday parties for 23 years. Dana pulled back from Vince's ear, and her eyes met Grant's across the living room. For exactly 3 seconds, time crystallized like ice forming on glass. Then she smiled, not embarrassment, not guilt. A smile that said she'd been waiting for this moment. "Hi, honey," she said, smoothing her blouse. "You're home early." Grant set his keys on the entrance table with the same careful precision he used to calibrate machinery at the plant. Meeting got canceled. Vince adjusted his tie, the blue one Grant had given him last Christmas. "Hey, Grant, we were just discussing the Patterson property. Dana's thinking about getting her real estate license." "Is she?" Grant's voice came out flat as sheet metal. "I should go." Vince grabbed his jacket from the couch. "Call me about those listings, Dana." He clapped Grant on the shoulder as he passed. "Good seeing you, buddy. We should grab beers soon." Grant watched through the window as Vince climbed into his silver BMW and backed out of their driveway. The same driveway Grant had shoveled every winter morning for 15 years, while Dana stayed warm inside. "Grant," Dana started, but he was already walking toward his truck. "I'm going for a drive," he said without turning around. "Grant, wait. We need to talk about—" The door closed behind him with a soft click. He sat in the truck cab for a full minute, staring at his hands on the steering wheel. Hands that had built half the furniture in their house. Hands that had held Dana during 3 miscarriages before Riley was born. Hands that had shaken Vince's at their wedding, when Vince was his best man and Dana was supposed to be his forever. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in 2 years. It rang once. "Jace, it's Grant. Remember what you said about owing me? It's time." Grant drove toward the mountains where the snow fell heavier and the cell service got spotty. By the time he reached the overlook above town, the factory lights looked like scattered coins in the darkness below. He'd known something was wrong for months. Dana's late nights at her book club that never seemed to discuss books. The way she'd started dressing different, tighter clothes, new perfume that smelled like promises she wasn't making to him. The credit card charges at restaurants Grant had never been to. But Vince, his childhood friend who'd taught him to fish, who'd been there when Grant's father died, who'd stood beside him at the altar 16 years ago and promised to always have his back. Grant's phone buzzed. A text from Dana. "Please come home so we can talk like adults." Like adults. As if Grant was the child in this equation. He typed back, "Working late tonight." "Don't wait up." Then he drove to the industrial district where Jace Milligan lived in a converted warehouse that smelled like motor oil and old anger. Jace answered the door holding a beer and a cigarette, his left arm hanging useless where shrapnel had torn through the muscle in Middle East. He took one look at Grant's face and stepped aside. "Who needs Desser toying?" Jace asked. "No one yet," Grant said. "But I need to move some things around. Quietly." Jace's smile was all sharp edges. "Now we're talking." The next morning, Grant drove to work like nothing had changed. He checked production reports, approved overtime schedules, and had coffee with his assistant manager while thinking about Dana's hands on Vince's chest. During lunch, he called his lawyer. Not the family attorney Dana knew about, but a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hollis, who specialized in asset protection for business owners going through messy divorces. Hypothetically, Grant said, walking the perimeter of the factory lot, if someone wanted to protect business assets from a spouse who might have access to financial records, what would be the smartest play? Hypothetically, Patricia said, that someone should have started 2 years ago. But if we're working with current circumstances, I'd suggest a forensic accountant and a private investigator. Some problems solve themselves once you shine enough light on them. Grant hired both that afternoon. The forensic accountant, Helen Yu, was a middle-aged woman who could spot financial inconsistencies the way doctors spot cancer in X-rays. She took copies of every business and personal account Grant could access and promised results within a week. The private investigator was younger than Grant expected, a former police detective named Tommy Shaw who'd started his own agency after getting tired of bureaucratic handcuffs. "I want to know everything," Grant told him across the desk of Shaw's cramped office. "Where they go, who they talk to, how long this has been happening. Everything." "Most guys in your situation don't really want to know everything," Shaw said. "They think they do, but when I hand them photos and receipts and timeline reports, they usually wish they'd stayed ignorant." "I'm not most guys," Grant said. Shaw studied him for a long moment. "No, I don't think you are." "Give me 2 weeks." That evening, Grant came home to find Dana cooking his favorite dinner, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the same meal she'd made every Thursday for the first 10 years of their marriage before she got too busy with her new social life. "Riley called," Dana said without looking up from the stove. "She wants to drive up from college this weekend. Their daughter. 17 years old and smart enough to see through most adult nonsense, but still young enough to believe her parents' marriage was something solid she could count on." "Good," Grant said. "I miss her. Grant, about yesterday, you were discussing real estate with Vince." Grant opened a beer and sat at the kitchen table. "I know, you told me." Dana set down her wooden spoon and turned to face him. "Are you going to make this difficult?" "Make what difficult?" "You know what I'm talking about." Grant took a long drink of beer and looked at his wife. Really looked at her. The crow's feet around her eyes that made her look distinguished instead of old. The way she still moved through their kitchen like she owned it because she did. Half of everything they'd built together, including the factory that employed 63 people and generated enough profit to keep them comfortable for the rest of their lives. "I'm not making anything difficult, Dana. But if there's something you want to tell me, now would be the time." She stared at him for 15 seconds, and Grant could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. How much to admit, how much to deny, how to position herself for whatever came next. "I want a divorce," she said finally. Grant nodded like she'd told him it might rain tomorrow. "Okay. Okay?" Dana's voice climbed higher. "That's all you're going to say? What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Something, anything. Ask me why, at least." Grant finished his beer and stood up. "I know why." He walked upstairs to the spare bedroom they'd been using for storage and pulled out the camping gear he hadn't touched in 5 years. Sleeping bag, portable stove, Coleman lantern. Tomorrow he'd call Patricia Hollis and start the legal process. Tonight, he needed to think. "Where are you going?" Dana called from the bottom of the stairs. "Camping," Grant said. "I'll be back Sunday." But he didn't go camping. Instead, he drove to the old logging road that wound through the state forest and parked at the trailhead where he and Vince used to hunt deer every October. He walked 2 miles into the woods with a flashlight and a thermos of coffee, to the clearing where they'd built a lean-to shelter in high school and carved their initials in an oak tree that was probably still standing. It was still standing. The initials were faded but readable. GL plus VR, best friends forever, carved in uneven teenage letters 30 years ago. Grant sat on a fallen log and called Tommy Shaw. "I need you to move faster," he said when Shaw answered. "And I need something else. I want to know about their finances, joint accounts, credit cards, any money that might be moving around." "That's more complicated," Shaw said. "Bank records require—" "Whatever it costs," Grant interrupted. "Send me the bill." He spent the night in his truck, dozing fitfully while snow collected on the windshield. When dawn broke gray and cold over the mountains, he drove home to find Dana's car already gone and a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at Mom's this weekend. We'll talk Monday." Grant burned the note in the sink and made coffee. Shaw called Tuesday morning with his preliminary report. "Your wife's been busy," Shaw said over the phone. "Hotel receipts going back 14 months? Always the same place, the Riverside Inn out on Route 9. Always the same pattern. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, sometimes Saturday nights, always paid for by Vincent Redden. 14 months. Not a recent mistake or a moment of weakness, a sustained campaign." "What else?" Grant asked. "This is where it gets interesting. 3 weeks ago, your wife opened a business account at First National. She's listed as president of something called Mountain View Property Solutions. Vincent Redden is listed as vice president." Grant felt something cold settle in his stomach. Go on." "The account's been dormant, but yesterday, one day after your wife told you she wanted a divorce, Vincent Redden deposited $50,000. Where did he get $50,000? That's the million-dollar question. His real estate commissions are public record, and he's not moving enough properties to have that kind of cash lying around. But here's what's really interesting. Last month, he took out a business loan against some commercial property downtown. Guess who co-signed? Grant already knew. Dana. Your wife co-signed for a $200,000 loan using your house as collateral. The paperwork shows her signature, but I'm betting she forged yours. Might want to check with your bank. Grant hung up and called First National. After 20 minutes of transfers and verification questions, the mortgage specialist confirmed what Shaw suspected. A loan modification had been processed 3 weeks ago, adding Vincent Redden as a secondary borrower with access to a credit line secured by Grant and Dana's home equity. The signature on the paperwork was a perfect forgery of Grant's own handwriting. Grant drove to work in a calm that felt dangerous, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the air pressure drops and animals start hiding. He spent the morning reviewing inventory reports and approving purchase orders, while thinking about 14 months of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the Riverside Inn. During lunch, he called Patricia Hollis. They forged my signature on a loan modification, he said without preamble. $200,000 against the house. That's a felony, Patricia said. But before we call the police, we need to think strategically. How do you want to play this? I want to take everything, Grant said. The house, the business, the retirement accounts, everything. That might be possible given the fraud, but it'll get ugly fast. Your wife will fight back. Let her fight. Helen Yu, the forensic accountant, called that afternoon with more bad news. Someone's been moving money out of your business accounts, she said. Small amounts over the past 6 months. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. Always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic alerts. Very sophisticated. How much total? 47,000 so far. All transferred to an account registered to Mountain View Property Solutions. Grant closed his office door and sat heavily in his chair. Dana hadn't just cheated on him. She'd been systematically looting their life together, planning an exit strategy that would leave him with nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Dana. Can we meet for dinner tonight? We need to discuss terms. Grant stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, Luigi's, 7 o'clock. Luigi's was where they'd had their first date 20 years ago. Where Grant had proposed, kneeling beside their usual table while the owner played violin and other diners applauded. Where they'd celebrated every anniversary until Dana got too busy with her book club and yoga classes and whatever else she called her life now. Grant arrived early and chose a corner booth where he could see the entire restaurant. He ordered a whiskey and watched snow fall past the windows while he waited. Dana walked in at exactly 7, wearing the black dress that had always been Grant's favorite, and perfume that smelled like the woman he'd married instead of the stranger she'd become. You look good, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. You look different, Grant replied. She ordered wine, and they sat in silence until the server brought their drinks. Dana raised her glass like she was making a toast. To new beginnings, she said. Grant didn't touch his whiskey. How long have you been stealing from the business? Dana's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. What? $47,000 over 6 months? Small amounts, carefully spread out, very professional. She set down the glass and straightened her shoulders. I don't know what you're talking about. Mountain View Property Solutions, the forged loan documents. Vincent Redden's $50,000 deposit yesterday? Dana's face went through several expressions. Surprise, calculation, and finally something that looked like relief. You hired a private investigator. I hired several people. Turns out you're not as clever as you thought. Grant, 14 months, he continued, his voice level and quiet. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the Riverside Inn. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, bank transfers. I know everything. Dana leaned back in the booth and smiled, the same smile she'd given him 3 days ago when he'd walked in on her and Vince. Do you feel better now? She asked. Knowing all the details? I feel informed. Good. Because here's what's going to happen. Dana's voice took on the tone she used when explaining things to particularly slow customers at her old job. We're going to get divorced quickly and quietly. I'll take half of everything like the law says I'm entitled to. You'll keep the factory and the house. I'll I'll take the investments and the retirement accounts. Clean and simple. And if I don't agree, then it gets messy. Vincent has friends at the courthouse. I have friends in town who might be very interested to hear about your temper problem. My temper problem? The way you threw me against the kitchen wall last month. The bruises on my arms that I had to cover with makeup. The threats you made when you found out about the loan. Grant felt the whiskey turn to acid in his stomach. None of that happened. My doctor has photos of the bruises. My sister heard the threats when you called me at her house. Vincent saw you following his car last week, driving erratically, like you'd been drinking. The booth suddenly felt very small. Grant looked around the restaurant, at the other diners, the servers, the manager by the host stand, and realized Dana had chosen this place for a reason. Public and familiar, somewhere people knew them as the stable couple who'd been coming here for decades. You've been planning this for a long time, he said. I've been planning for every contingency, Dana replied, including the one where you try to play hardball with lawyers and private investigators. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. To anyone watching, it would look like a tender moment between a couple working through their problems. Take the deal, Grant. Keep your dignity and your business. Let me have my freedom and my fair share. Everyone wins. Grant looked down at her hand on his. The wedding ring he'd saved for 3 months to buy, working double shifts at the steel mill while she finished college. The manicured nails that had scratched his back 1,000 nights before they started scratching Vincent Redden's. What about Riley? He asked. Riley's almost 18. She can choose where to spend holidays and whose house to visit. This doesn't have to affect her relationship with either of us. Grant lifted his eyes to meet hers. You really think you're going to win this? I already have won this. Dana squeezed his hand and smiled. The only question is whether you're smart enough to accept it. Grant pulled his hand away and stood up. He dropped a 20 on the table and looked down at his wife of 16 years. I'll let you know, he said, but he already knew. Dana thought she was playing chess while Grant was playing checkers. She'd underestimated him the same way she'd underestimated the forensic accountant's ability to track hidden money transfers and the private investigator's talent for finding things people thought they'd hidden. What she'd really underestimated was how much Grant was willing to lose in order to make sure she lost everything. Grant drove home through the industrial district, past the factory where he'd worked his way up from floor supervisor to general manager over 22 years. Past the warehouse where Jace Milligan was probably drinking beer and cleaning tools while he waited for Grant to call with phase 2 of their plan. The house was dark when he pulled into the driveway. Dana's car wasn't there, probably back at her mother's house or maybe the Riverside Inn with Vincent Redden, celebrating their victory dinner. Grant walked through the rooms he'd painted and carpeted and furnished, thinking about what 14 months of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons had cost him. Not just money, though the financial betrayal was bad enough. Dana had stolen time. She'd stolen years of his life when he could have been building something real with someone who actually wanted to be there. He went upstairs to their bedroom and opened Dana's jewelry box. The diamond earrings he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. The pearl necklace from their trip to San Francisco. The tennis bracelet she'd said was too expensive, but he'd bought anyway because her face lit up when she saw it in the jewelry store window. All of it still there, because Dana was smart enough to know that missing jewelry would make her look guilty if this ended up in court. But hidden behind the jewelry box was something Dana didn't know Grant had found. A small manila envelope containing photocopies of bank statements, loan applications, and business registration documents. Dana's insurance policy, in case Vincent tried to cut her out of their partnership. Grant studied the papers by lamplight, memorizing account numbers and dates and signatures. By the time he finished, he understood the full scope of what Dana and Vincent had been building. Mountain View Property Solutions wasn't just a front for their affair. It was a legitimate business designed to acquire properties around town, including the commercial real estate where Grant's factory was located. The plan was elegant and ruthless. Wait for the divorce to go through, use Grant's settlement money to buy his building, then raise his rent until he couldn't afford to stay in business. They weren't just stealing his wife and his money. They were stealing his life's work. Grant's phone rang, Jace Milligan's name on the display. You ready for that favor? Jace asked. Tomorrow night, Grant said. Meet me at the factory at midnight. Bring the heavy equipment. What kind of job are we talking about? Grant looked around the bedroom he'd shared with Dana for 16 years. at the bed where Riley was conceived, at the dresser where Dana kept the love letters Grant had written her during their brief, long-distance courtship after college. The kind that requires careful timing, Grant said. The next morning, Helen Yu called with the final piece of the puzzle. "I found where your wife's been hiding the money," she said. "Offshore account in the Cayman Islands registered to a holding company called Redden Holdings. Vincent Redden is listed as the managing partner, but the beneficial owner is listed as D. Loring, how much? Including the money they transferred from your business accounts and the proceeds from the forged loan, about $300,000. Grant closed his office door and leaned back in his chair. $300,000, enough to start over somewhere else, far from the town where everyone would know them as the couple who'd had the messy divorce. Here's the interesting part," Helen continued. "The account was opened 18 months ago. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Your wife and her boyfriend have been planning this since before they started sleeping together. 18 months ago, Dana had suggested Grant take out additional business insurance. She'd recommended the commercial property loan that now had Vincent Redden as a co-signer. She'd encouraged Grant to consolidate their retirement accounts into a single fund that would be easier to divide in case of divorce. At the time, Grant had thought Dana was being practical, looking out for their financial future. Planning ahead. She had been planning ahead, just not for their future together. Grant spent the rest of the day finalizing arrangements. He transferred the factory's emergency operating fund to an account Dana couldn't access. He signed papers giving himself sole authorization over all business decisions. He called his insurance agent and canceled the policies Dana had recommended. Then he drove to the courthouse and filed a complaint against Vincent Redden for loan fraud and identity theft. By 5 o'clock, Vincent's real estate license was under investigation and his access to the forged loan was frozen pending a criminal inquiry. Grant's phone rang at 6:30 while he was eating dinner alone at his kitchen table. Dana's number on the display. "What did you do?" she demanded without preamble. "I protected my interests," Grant said calmly. "The same way you've been protecting yours. Vincent can't access the business account. The bank said there's some kind of fraud investigation. Imagine that. Grant, you need to call them and fix this. Vincent didn't do anything wrong. Vincent forged my signature on loan documents and helped you steal $47,000 from my business. I'd say that's definitely something wrong." There was a long pause. Then Dana's voice came back harder, more controlled. "You want to play it this way? Fine. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing a restraining order. By tomorrow night, you'll be out of your own house." "On what grounds?" "The bruises Vincent photographed after you grabbed me. The threatening voicemails you left on my phone. The way you've been stalking us." Grant set down his fork and considered his response. Dana was escalating because her original plan had hit a snag, but she still thought she held the winning cards. She was about to learn otherwise. "Go ahead and file," Grant said. "But you might want to check your own accounts first." "What do you mean?" "I mean, your Cayman Islands account is frozen too. Turns out the IRS gets very interested when American citizens hide money offshore without reporting it." Something about tax evasion. The line went quiet for 30 seconds. "You bastard," Dana whispered finally. "Now we're getting somewhere," Grant said. "Tomorrow night, the Riverside Inn, room 237, 8 o'clock. We're going to have a real conversation. I'm not meeting you anywhere." "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to release copies of every bank statement, every hotel receipt, and every forged document to your mother, your sister, your friends at the book club, and anyone else who might be interested." Grant hung up and went back to eating his dinner. Tomorrow night, Dana would learn what happened when someone underestimated a man who'd spent 22 years building something from nothing. But first, he had some equipment to move. At midnight, Grant met Jace Milligan in the factory parking lot. Jace brought his pickup truck and a trailer loaded with industrial dollies, a forklift, and enough moving blankets to wrap a piano. "What exactly are we relocating?" Jace asked, lighting a cigarette. "Peace of mind," Grant replied. They worked until 4 in the morning, carefully removing $3 million worth of specialized manufacturing equipment from the factory floor and loading it onto trucks bound for a warehouse facility Grant had rented 2 towns away. By dawn, the factory building was empty except for the fixed infrastructure that couldn't be moved. Grant left a note for his assistant manager explaining that the equipment was being relocated for routine maintenance and upgrades. Production would resume the following week at the temporary facility. What Grant didn't explain was that the temporary facility would become permanent if Dana and Vincent tried to acquire the building where his factory was currently located. Grant went home, showered, and called in sick to work. Then he drove to Patricia Hollis's office to review the legal documents she'd prepared. "You're sure you want to do this?" Patricia asked, sliding a manila folder across her desk. "Once you file these papers, there's no going back. I'm sure." Grant signed his name to divorce papers that would freeze all joint assets pending a full investigation into Dana's financial activities. He signed papers transferring ownership of the factory to a business trust that Dana couldn't touch. He signed papers authorizing the seizure of any funds that could be traced to his forged signature or stolen business accounts. "Your wife is going to fight this," Patricia warned. "Her lawyer will claim you're being vindictive. Let him claim whatever he wants. Do we have enough evidence to make the charges stick?" "More than enough." The forged loan documents alone carry a potential 5-year sentence. Add the tax evasion and the business theft, and your wife is looking at serious jail time. What about Vincent? He's looking at worse. This was his idea, at least according to the paper trail. Your wife could plausibly claim she was manipulated by an experienced con man. Grant thought about Vincent Redden, his childhood friend who'd taught him to tie fishing knots and shoot rifles and talk to girls, who'd been his best man and Riley's godfather and the person Grant trusted most in the world outside his own family. "File everything," Grant said. That evening, Grant drove to the Riverside Inn with a manila envelope full of photocopied documents and a digital recorder in his jacket pocket. The inn was a tired-looking building from the 1970s, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour to people who didn't want their names on any permanent records. Room 237 was on the second floor, overlooking the parking lot where Dana's car was already waiting. Grant knocked on the door. "It's open," Dana called. She was sitting on the bed, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the dress-up clothes she'd worn to their dinner at Luigi's. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked younger, more like the woman Grant had married. "You came," she said. "You knew I would." "I wasn't sure. After yesterday, I thought you might be too angry to think straight." Grant sat in the room's single chair, keeping the bed between them. "I'm thinking fine." "Are you? Because what you did to Vincent was cruel. He's lost everything, his business, his reputation, his savings, all because he fell in love with the wrong woman. He fell in love with my wife, my money, my business. That makes him either stupid or greedy, and I don't think Vincent's stupid." Dana stood up and walked to the window. "You want to know why I started seeing him?" "I know why. You wanted out of our marriage and you needed someone to help you take as much as possible when you left." "No." Dana turned around to face him. "I started seeing Vincent because you stopped seeing me. When was the last time you asked me how my day was? When was the last time we had dinner together without you checking your phone? When was the last time you looked at me like I was something more than a fixture in your house? When was the last time you gave me a reason to—" "That's not fair." "Fair?" Grant pulled the manila envelope from his jacket and set it on the small table between them. "You want to talk about fair? Open it." Dana stared at the envelope but didn't move. "Open it," Grant repeated. She picked up the envelope and pulled out the photocopied documents. Bank statements showing money transfers, hotel receipts dating back over a year, business registration papers for Mountain View Property Solutions, loan applications with Grant's forged signature. "Where did you get these?" Dana asked quietly. "From your jewelry box. Apparently you thought you needed insurance against Vincent in case he decided to cut you out of the partnership." Dana sat heavily on the bed, still holding the papers. "Grant, 18 months, he said. "That's how long you've been planning this. 18 months of lying to my face while you set up secret accounts and forged my signature and plotted to steal my business. I didn't want to hurt you. You wanted to destroy me. There's a difference." Dana looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to survive. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who cares more about his factory than his family? Someone who works 60 hours a week and comes home too tired to have a real conversation? Do you know what it's like working 60 hours a week to support someone who spends your money on hotel rooms with your best friend?" They stared at each other across the shabby hotel room where Dana had been meeting Vincent Redden twice a week for 14 months. Outside, snow was falling harder, coating the parking lot and the windshields of their cars. "What do you want?" Dana asked finally. "I want you to call Vincent and tell him to meet us here." "Why?" "Because this conversation isn't finished." "Not until all three of us are in the same room." Dana pulled out her phone and dialed. After a few seconds, she said, "Vincent, I need you to come to the inn, room 237, right now." She hung up and looked at Grant. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. "Good. That gives us time to talk about how this ends." "How what ends?" "Your marriage, your freedom, your future." Grant leaned forward in his chair. "Because right now, you're looking at felony charges for fraud, tax evasion, and theft. Vincent's looking at the same charges plus conspiracy. The evidence is overwhelming and the penalties are severe. What are you offering?" "A choice. You can fight this in court and probably go to jail for 5 to 10 years. Or you can cooperate with the investigation and maybe walk away with probation and community service." "What kind of cooperation?" "Full confession. Complete financial disclosure. Testimony against Vincent as the primary organizer of the fraud." Dana's face went pale. "You want me to betray him?" "I want you to tell the truth. Vincent manipulated you into helping him steal from me. You were a vulnerable woman going through a midlife crisis, and he took advantage of your emotional state to turn you against your husband. That's not what happened. That's what happened according to the story you're going to tell if you want to. Avoid jail time." There was a knock at the door. "That's him," Dana said. "Answer it." Dana opened the door and Vincent Redden walked in, shaking snow from his coat. He stopped when he saw Grant sitting in the chair. "What's he doing here?" Vincent asked. "Waiting for you," Grant replied. "Close the door." Vincent looked at Dana, then at the papers scattered on the bed. "What's going on?" "Grant knows everything," Dana said quietly. "He has copies of all the documents." Vincent's face cycled through several expressions before settling on anger. "You told me you destroyed those papers." "I kept copies." "Insurance. Insurance against what?" "Against this," Dana gestured at the room. "Against the day when everything fell apart and I needed proof that this was your idea." Vincent stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh sound that had nothing to do with humor. "My idea? You came to me, remember? You said your husband was a boring workaholic who didn't appreciate you. You said he kept you like a pet in a house you couldn't even afford without his factory income. Vincent, you said you deserved better. You said you wanted to take him for everything he was worth and start over somewhere warm." Vincent turned to Grant. "Did she tell you about the house in Florida? The one she picked out for us to buy with your money?" Grant felt something cold settle in his chest. "What house?" "Beachfront condo in Sarasota. 2 bedrooms, golf view, swimming pool. Dana's been planning our retirement while you've been working your ass off to pay for it." Dana sat down hard on the bed. "Vincent, stop." "Stop what? Telling the truth?" "Your husband deserves to know what kind of woman he married." Vincent pulled out his phone and showed Grant the screen. "She sent me this photo last week. That's her in a bikini on the beach where we're going to live after the divorce settlement comes through." Grant looked at the photo of his wife posing in front of a real estate sign, smiling like she'd already won the lottery. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 days before Dana asked him for a divorce. "How long?" Grant asked quietly. "How long what?" Vincent replied. "How long have you been planning to leave town with my money?" "Since the beginning." Dana never intended to stay here after the divorce. This whole thing was about getting enough cash to disappear. Dana stood up from the bed, her face flushed with anger. "That's not true." "It's not? What about the passport application you filed under your maiden name? What about the bank account in Nassau where you've been wire transferring money for 6 months?" Grant turned to look at Dana. "Nassau? I can explain. The Cayman account was just the start," Vincent continued. "Dana's been building a financial network across 3 countries. Shell companies, offshore trusts, cryptocurrency exchanges. She's not some innocent wife who got seduced by her husband's best friend. She's a criminal." "Shut up," Dana snapped. "Why should I shut up?" "You already threw me under the bus with your little insurance policy." Vincent gestured at the papers on the bed. "You kept evidence against me while telling me you loved me. You played both sides from day one." Grant stood up slowly. "Both of you planned this?" "No," Dana said quickly. "Vincent's lying. He's trying to make me look worse, so So what? Vincent laughed again. So you'll get a lighter sentence? We're both screwed, Dana. Your husband made sure of that when he froze our accounts and called the FBI. The FBI? Dana's voice cracked. Grant pulled the digital recorder from his pocket and set it on the table. The red light was blinking. Everything you've said in the last 10 minutes is being recorded, he said calmly. Conspiracy to commit fraud across state lines is a federal crime. Vincent's face went white. You bastard. I'm the bastard? You stole my wife, my money, and my business, and I'm the bastard? Your wife was miserable. Your money was just sitting there earning nothing. Your business could have made us all rich if you weren't so conservative. My business kept 63 families fed and housed. Your scheme would have destroyed all of that. Vincent stepped closer to Grant. Your business was going to fail anyway. The factory building needs $2 million in renovations you can't afford. The equipment is 20 years old. You were going to lose everything in 5 years, whether we helped or not. Maybe, but it would have been my choice to lose it. Vincent pulled a tool from his coat pocket, a small silver revolver that looked like it belonged in a movie. Vincent, don't, Dana whispered. Don't what? He's going to send us both to prison. Everything we worked for, everything we built together, he's going to take it all away. Grant looked at the Magnum without moving. You think shooting me will solve your problems? I think shooting you will give us time to get to the Bahamas account and disappear. The Bahamas account is frozen too. So is the cryptocurrency wallet. So are the shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Vincent's hand shook slightly. You're lying. I spent 3 weeks mapping your entire financial network, every account, every transfer, every shell company Dana set up. It's all gone. That's impossible. Grant reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila folder. Forensic accounting report. 47 pages detailing every dollar you stole and every law you broke doing it. He tossed the folder onto the bed beside Dana. Helen Yu is very thorough. She found money you probably forgot you had. Dana opened the folder and her face went ashen. Vincent, he knows about the property in Costa Rica. What property in Costa Rica? Grant asked. The retirement house, Vincent said quietly, lowering the tool. We bought 40 acres in the mountains, off the grid, completely private. Bought with what money? Your money, Dana whispered. The loan we took against the house. I'm sorry, Grant. I'm so sorry. Grant felt a strange calm settle over him. For weeks, he'd been uncovering layers of betrayal, each one worse than the last. Now he finally knew the full scope of what they'd done to him. 40 acres in Costa Rica. A condo in Florida. Bank accounts in 3 countries. Cryptocurrency wallets. Shell companies. Grant looked at his wife and his former best friend. You weren't just stealing from me. You were erasing me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Dana said, tears streaming down her face. We were going to leave you enough to restart somewhere else. We weren't going to take everything. Yes, you were. Because leaving me with anything would have been a risk. I might have found you. I might have found the money. Better to destroy me completely and make sure I could never threaten your new life. Vincent raised the tool again. None of that matters now. We can still disappear. $3 million is enough to start over anywhere in the world. What $3 million? Grant asked. The insurance money from the factory fire? Grant felt ice form in his veins. What factory fire? Vincent smiled for the first time since entering the room. The one that's going to happen tonight. Electrical malfunction. Very sad. But thankfully you had excellent insurance coverage. Vincent, Dana said quietly, that wasn't part of the plan. Plans change. Your husband forced us to accelerate the timeline. Grant's phone buzzed. A text message from Jace Milligan. Fire department's here. Building's gone. Sorry, brother. Grant stared at the message, then at Vincent's satisfied smile, then at Dana's shocked expression. You burned down my factory, Grant said. Insurance fires happen all the time. Old building, outdated wiring, space heaters in the winter. The investigators will find exactly what they're supposed to find. 63 jobs. Gone. 63 jobs that were going to disappear anyway when you went bankrupt. Grant put his phone away and looked at Vincent Redden. Really looked at him. The man who'd been his best friend for 30 years. who'd taught him to drive and helped him move into his first apartment, and held Riley when she was born. The equipment, Grant said slowly. You needed the factory equipment to burn with the building. That's why you waited until now. Very good. Nothing suspicious about a fire that destroys worthless old machinery. Except the machinery isn't there anymore. Vincent's smile faltered. What do you mean? I moved it 3 days ago. Every piece of equipment, every tool, every spare part. It's all in a warehouse facility 2 towns away, completely undamaged. Vincent's face went through several changes before settling on rage. You knew. I suspected. The insurance recommendations Dana made 18 months ago. The commercial property loan with your name on it, the business partnership set up to acquire real estate. You weren't just planning to steal my money. You were planning to steal my building and collect insurance money when you burned it down. That's impossible. You couldn't have known. I didn't know. But I planned for every contingency, Grant smiled coldly. The same way you thought you did. Vincent pointed the tool at Grant's chest. Where's the equipment? Safe. Where? Somewhere you'll never find it. I'll end you. Then you'll never find it. Dana will go to prison for 20 years, and you'll go to the electric chair. Vincent, put the tool down, Dana said. This has gone far enough. Far enough. He's destroyed everything we built, everything we worked for. We built it with stolen money. We worked for it by lying and cheating and betraying someone who trusted us. Vincent turned to stare at Dana. Don't tell me you're having second thoughts. I'm telling you this isn't worth ending someone over. It's worth $3 million. There is no $3 million, Grant said quietly. The insurance policy was canceled yesterday. The building that burned tonight is worth exactly nothing. Vincent's grip on the tool tightened. You're lying. Call the insurance company. Ask them about policy number 447, benign X2021. See what they tell you. Vincent pulled out his phone with his free hand and dialed. After 30 seconds, his face went gray. Policy canceled due to premium non-payment, he said in a hollow voice. I stopped paying the premiums the day I found out about your forged loan, Grant said. Amazing how fast insurance companies move when you're 3 days behind on payments. Vincent dropped the phone and pointed the tool at Grant with both hands. You destroyed my life. No, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't destroy mine too. Vincent, please, Dana said, stepping between them. Put it away. We'll figure something else out. There is nothing else. No money, no business, no future. He took everything. Grant looked at Vincent Redden holding the tool with shaking hands. His childhood friend who'd chosen greed over loyalty and was now choosing violence over consequences. You still have one choice left, Grant said. What choice? Walk away right now, take nothing and disappear? I won't come after you if you don't give me a reason to. And let you keep everything? I'm keeping what was always mine. You're losing what was never yours to take. Vincent stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to Dana. Are you coming with me? Dana looked at Vincent, then at Grant, then at the floor. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I mean, I can't run for the rest of my life. I can't live in hiding, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid someone will find us. So you're choosing him? I'm choosing to face what we did. Maybe if we cooperate with the investigation, maybe if we tell the truth, we can get through this without destroying what's left of our lives. Vincent's laugh was bitter. There is nothing left of our lives. He made sure of that. He turned the tool back toward Grant. You want to know the truth? I'm glad we took your money. I'm glad we burned your factory. I'm glad we destroyed your pathetic little life. Vincent, Dana whispered. You were always jealous of me, Vincent continued. In high school, in college, after we graduated. You hated that things came easy to me while you had to work for everything. Things came easy to you because you cheated, Grant replied. You cheated on tests, you cheated on girlfriends, you cheated in business. Taking my wife and my money was just another way of cheating. I took your wife because she wanted to be taken. I took your money because you were too stupid to protect it. I burned your factory because you deserved to lose everything. Grant felt something shift inside him. A door closing on 20 years of friendship and 16 years of marriage. A decision crystallizing like ice forming on glass. You're right, he said quietly. I did deserve to lose everything, because I trusted you, because I believed Dana when she said she loved me, because I thought loyalty and hard work mattered more than schemes and manipulation. And now you know better. Now I know better. Grant reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device, different from the one he'd shown them earlier. This conversation has been broadcast live to Patricia Hollis's law office, where she's been recording everything for the FBI, he said. Conspiracy, extortion, arson, and now armed robbery. You just confessed to everything on federal recording equipment. Vincent's face went completely white. That's impossible. You want to bet your life on what's possible? There was a knock at the door. A firm official knock that made everyone in the room freeze. FBI! A voice called from outside. Open the door! Vincent swung the tool toward the door, then back to Grant. You set us up. I gave you every opportunity to walk away clean. You chose to dig deeper. The knocking came again, louder this time. Open the door now or we're coming in. Vincent looked at the door, then at Dana, then at Grant. His face was pale and his hands were shaking, but his voice was steady when he spoke. You think you won? I think I survived. You didn't win anything. Your wife doesn't love you. Your best friend betrayed you. Your factory's a pile of ashes. What exactly did you win? Grant considered the question. What had he won? Dana was going to prison. Vincent was going to prison. The factory was gone. Most of his money was tied up in legal proceedings that could take years to resolve. But 63 families would keep their jobs at the new facility. His daughter would inherit a business that was stronger than ever, and Grant would never again have to wonder if the people closest to him were planning to destroy him. I won the truth, he said finally. And I won the certainty that neither of you will ever be able to hurt me again. The door exploded inward, and 3 FBI agents rushed into the room, weapons drawn. Drop the tool! The lead agent shouted. Vincent looked at it in his hands, then at Grant, then at Dana. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Then Vincent pointed the tool at his own head and did that. The sound was surprisingly small in the confined space of the hotel room. Vincent Redden collapsed to the floor while Dana screamed and Grant stared at the wall, where his childhood friend's traces was slowly dripping toward the carpet. Suspect down, one of the agents said into his radio. We need medical and crime scene. But there was no need for medical. Vincent Redden was gone, taking with him 30 years of friendship and the last piece of Grant's old life. Grant sat in the FBI field office for 6 hours, answering questions and signing statements while Dana was processed in a different room. He called his daughter to tell her she should stay at college for the rest of the semester. He called his insurance agent to discuss rebuilding plans. He called Jace Milligan to say the job was finished. By dawn, Grant was driving home through snow-covered mountains, past the blackened ruins of his factory and the motel where his wife had been meeting her lover for 14 months. The sun was rising over the valley, painting the snow pink and gold. Grant's house was dark and empty when he pulled into the driveway. He sat in his truck for a few minutes, looking at the windows where Dana used to wait for him to come home from work, where she used to stand waving goodbye when he left for business trips, where she used to hang Christmas lights every December until she got too busy with her new life to bother. Inside, the house felt different. Smaller somehow, but also more peaceful. Grant walked through rooms that had witnessed 16 years of marriage and realized he felt relieved rather than sad. The pretense was finally over. His phone rang. Patricia Hollis. The prosecutor wants to meet with you this morning, she said. Dana's agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. She's going to plead guilty to fraud and tax evasion in exchange for 3 years probation and full restitution. What about the money? They recovered most of it. The offshore accounts, the cryptocurrency, the property in Costa Rica. You'll get back about 90% of what they stole. Grant sat down at his kitchen table, the same table where Dana had served him pot roast 3 nights ago, and asked for a divorce. What happens now? He asked. Now you rebuild. The insurance money from your equipment will cover the cost of setting up the new facility. You'll have your business back up and running within 6 months. And Dana will serve her probation and then disappear. Probably back to her maiden name, probably to another state. You'll likely never see her again. Grant thought about that. never seeing Dana again, never wondering if she was lying to him or stealing from him or planning to destroy him, never having to pretend their marriage was something it hadn't been for years. "Good," he said. He hung up and walked upstairs to the bedroom he'd shared with Dana for 16 years. Her clothes were still in the closet, her perfume still on the dresser, her books still on the nightstand. Evidence of a life that had never been as real as Grant thought it was. Grant packed everything into boxes and loaded them into his truck. Then he drove to Dana's mother's house and left the boxes on the front porch with a note. For Dana, good luck with your new life. On the drive back home, Grant stopped at the cemetery where his parents were buried. He walked through the snow to their shared headstone and stood there for a long time, thinking about the conversation he would have had with his father about loyalty and betrayal and the price of trust. His phone buzzed. A text from Riley. "Dad, I heard about the fire and Mom's arrest. I'm driving home tonight. I love you." Grant smiled for the first time in weeks. His daughter was coming home. His business would survive. The people who had betrayed him were gone from his life forever. Standing in the snow beside his parents' graves, Grant Loring realized he had won something after all. He had won his freedom from people who had never deserved his trust. He had won the right to build a new life based on truth instead of lies. Most importantly, he had won the certainty that he would never again be anyone's victim. Grant walked back to his truck and drove toward the mountains, where the new factory was waiting and the future was whatever he chose to make it. In his rearview mirror, the town where he'd lived his entire life grew smaller until it disappeared entirely. Behind him, the past burned like ashes. Ahead of him, everything was possible.